on today's StoryBeat.
What stops most of us from being creative is the belief that, oh, well, I'm not creative. I don't even know how to draw a stick figure. If I told you how many times I've heard that, it's like, artistic expression is one form of creativity, but it's not the only one. Creativity lives in virtually every single domain. If you're a human, you're a natural born creative.
This is StoryBeat with Steve Cuden, a podcast for the creative mind. StoryBeat explores how masters of creativity develop and produce brilliant works that people everywhere love and admire. So join us as we discover how talented creators find success in the worlds of imagination and entertainment. Here now is your host, Steve Cuden.
Thanks for joining us on StoryBeat. We're coming to you from the Steel City, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My guest today, Pia Mailhot-Leichter, is a creative partner, published author, certified coach, and entrepreneur. Her path has been anything but ordinary. A recovering nomad, she's reported as a journalist in Sri Lanka, graduated summa cum laude from NYU, and worked as an award-winning creative director for some of the biggest brands in the world. Now, as the founder of Kollektiv Studio, through creative partnership from storytelling to coaching, Pia is uniquely positioned to co-create wild visions and ventures. Kollektiv Studio works with founders, leaders, and creatives with a rebellious spirit and visionary tendencies. As Pia puts it, the outcome isn't just what you create, it's who you become in the process. She recently published Welcome to the Creative Club, a book that challenges everything people thought they knew about creativity. Praised by Google's global head of creative and innovation as life-changing, and by iconic fashion designer Betsey Johnson as a wild ride, this part memoir, part guide invites readers to make life their biggest art project and reclaim their creative power. I've read Welcome to the Creative Club, and as a lifelong creator myself, I found it to be eye-opening in how Pia cuts straight to the heart of overcoming the stumbling blocks that most creatives encounter. If you're looking to supercharge your creativity, I highly recommend Welcome to the Creative Club to you. So for all those reasons and many more, I'm deeply honored to have the creative force, better known as Pia Leichter, join me today. Pia, welcome to StoryBeat.
Thank you so much, Steve. What a warm and lovely welcome. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a great pleasure to have you here. So let's go back in time a little bit. At what point in your life did you know you were a creative person?
It's really interesting because as we are all creative people, but as kids, it's naturally
It
creative.
is.
Like I don't even think of myself. We don't think of ourselves as creative as kids, right? We're just making stuff.
Right.
We're just playing. We're just imagining. We're just doing things. So from a really young age, I remember playing and creating. I would write stories about a princess who didn't need a kiss to wake up, and inspired by Shel Silverstein's poems and writing my own poems, and doing a lot of different things. And I was fortunate to grow up in a household where my dad's an abstract painter. So creativity and art were just a part of life. Like, weekends would come, he'd put on classical music or Stevie Wonder on the radio, and he would start painting in front of a canvas with his paint splattered jeans and a cup of coffee nearby. And I'd be on the floor, drawing or writing. I'd usually write. That was my medium.
So you were surrounded by art even as a child.
Yes. And it was always something that was just what we did. Do you know, it didn't really feel special because it's what was around me.
Sure.
Like even his friends, like my dad had a loft on the Lower East Side on the Bowery in New York City for 25 years. So a lot of artist friends. And
I think that makes you as a creative person, that's your natural being. That's the state that you grew up in. It isn't something that you had to force or go find. It was just always there.
Exactly. I mean, then the question is, am I creative enough, right? That there's always that enoughness as you get older, but not as a child.
And how do you apply it? How do you apply what you have into whatever it is you're doing? And like you say, as kids, we're all very creative. We play and we have all that fun. But sometimes as adults, we lose some of that. And I
Oh,
think that's what's
yes.
helpful about your book is that it brings us to how can we do this an adult, not only just in life, but in work and all the rest of it. Were you a competitive kid? Was that something that you liked to do, to compete?
No, no, I don't think so. I think as an adult, well, listen, I remember I had this question asked so many times as a kid. It's like, oh, so do you draw and paint like your father? Like it's like, and I would almost want to rebel against that because it was his, it wasn't mine. So I think
Mhm.
not that there was any competition, but it was, there was a comparison from the outside about like, oh, of course I would do what my father does. And I always felt like I wanted to claim my own way of creating. So
Mhm.
there it was mine in a
Well,
way.
that's I think all kids want to sort of distance themselves at some point from what
Yeah,
their parents do, even if they do what their parents do. They want to distance
exactly.
themselves. You say, which I found fascinating, that you're a recovering nomad. What does that mean?
That means that I spent my whole life moving and traveling.
Hmm.
My mom, a proud hippie and independent independent spirit, just, she loved do-overs. She liked a good move. She liked change. And so we would pack up every year, 2 years and move to different places. So my dad was like he was always on the Lower East Side, so that felt most like home. But I've
Hmm.
lived in, Manhattan and Brooklyn and Puerto Rico and Montreal and Ottawa and Vermont and just moving a lot.
And how do you think that impacted you, not only as a child, but ultimately as a creative person?
Whew, that's a great question. As a child, it shaped me. It shaped who I am. It taught me so much. It taught me how to adapt, and how to, in a way, shapeshift to be in many different cultures.
Well, you have that in the book that you're a
Right.
shapeshifter. So as long as you've brought it up, what does that mean that you're a shapeshifter?
That means I'm able to read the energy in a room, the culture in a particular place, sort of, what do I need to wear? How do I need to be in order to not only survive, but to thrive? To,
Hmm.
to like fit in, to be a part of this. Even though I might not be here for very long, I want the time that I am here to be good, to be meaningful.
The word shapeshifter is used quite liberally as a character trait in storytelling. And shapeshifters are in lots and lots and lots of stories. And you've noted for yourself that you're a shapeshifter. And that means that you're able to sort of meld yourself into whatever circumstance you're in.
Yeah, and that can be a gift and a curse.
How so?
Well, because I start to ask myself the question, it's like when you keep changing shapes over and over again, do you forget the original form or shape of you?
And do you? And what do you do if you do?
Well, I think I do. I did at some point, and then it's a homecoming. Age, look, they're not tons of benefits about getting older, older, but one of them is like a feeling more at home in the skin you're in.
Hmm.
And being able to sort of stay grounded, like, yes, I could shift to make other people comfortable or to make this smoother. But you know what? I'm not going to because I don't have to. I don't have to worry about making other people okay for me to be okay. That's a very, as a young child, like as a young person, that was often sort of what was guiding me too. Like, how do I make everything okay so that I could also be okay in
Well,
it?
you also
Right.
had that issue where you were always moving, so you were in new environments all the time, and you were trying to fit in, I assume.
Yeah, I mean, and I usually did. I did a pretty good job. And so
Mhm.
it was just, and I think at some point as I got older, it's like, okay, wait a minute. I realized and became aware I don't have to fit into any shape or into any room. I don't have to, you know, make myself smaller or just change how I'm feeling or who I am in any given situation. I can, but I don't have to.
You don't need Alice's magic pill to get larger or smaller.
No, I don't. But actually, the practice is staying my size.
How that's interesting. What does that mean?
Well, that means that,
You stay
being
you.
able, I stay me, being able to be compassionate and empathetic and understand people and see people and feel their energy and not take the pill that I think is needed to make other people okay or the surroundings better, but just to know that I can be who I am and as I am. and hold space for people being who they are and as they are without needing to change.
Do you think that makes you a little bit of an empath?
Oh, definitely. I think to a certain, definitely. I mean, I also grew up in a lot of chaos. Bless my parents. I grew up with a lot of love, but my mom loved to party, and there was a lot of chaos in my home apart from moving and stuff. And there's a lot of life and color and sound and also, changing shapes. People change shapes when they drink. So
For sure.
you have to learn how to this is unpredictable. So you become more highly sensitive to the environment.
And that, I assume, has helped you greatly over the years as a creative director, because you're able
Definitely.
to work your way around whatever those circumstances are that you're being thrown into.
Definitely. And it also made me a great storyteller, because sometimes when life as it was felt scary or difficult, I was able to escape into the world of my own making. I had an imagination that would take me places, and I could go there, and I would travel there often when I needed to, within myself, within the stories I would write or create within, and also within other people's stories. I mean, I remember sitting on the floor in Barnes and Noble. I could just in Manhattan, I could just 6th Avenue. I could just sit there for hours just reading stories as a kid, and then also creating them myself. And so I think in many ways, the shit in our lives that we might go through there are gifts in it. There's gold in it. We just need to be able to see it.
If you can back up enough to take perspective and see it.
Absolutely. And when we learn to appreciate everything, who we are and everything it took to bring us to this place. And I do think there's always a flip side. To every gift, there's a flip side. To every quote unquote curse, there's also a flip side.
Well, that's the infamous silver lining in the gray cloud. It's always there.
It's always there. So I'm grateful for everything I went through, because it made me who I am, and it gave me superpowers. I also have kryptonite through it too, but it gave me superpowers.
I think that kind of just makes you human.
Yeah, definitely.
Everybody has whatever their kryptonite is, and sometimes it really knocks you for a loop, and sometimes you overcome it relatively easily. It just depends upon the circumstance. So you eventually become a longtime creative director for lots of different products. Did you go to school to learn to be a creative director?
No, I never did.
How did you get there?
So I went to Hunter College in New York City, and I studied English language arts, so language, literature, arts, and writing. And I was writing a lot then, and I wanted to make a career in writing or creativity, but I think, and this is a story I'm still rewriting, and I'm very conscious of it. I grew up witnessing my father in New York City as an abstract painter go through the highs and lows of being an artist, also financially. It's a tough life. At least that's what I saw, and I saw financial strife and difficulties, and him working as a blackjack dealer for the mafia, and him, working at the Metropolitan Museum of Art as a security guard, working as a merchant marine for 6 months in Borneo, just to be able to make his art. Like it was all just to fuel and fund his art. I remember he used to tell me, I didn't choose art, art chose me.
That's a very compelling way to look at it.
Yeah, he said, I had to do it. This is what I was meant to do. And so he did everything he could to do it. But it meant, and sometimes also, a lot of women don't want to be number two to his art. It had a lot of concept, like what from my small, little person's eyes, are a lot of consequences to choosing to follow the art path. You had to pay a hefty rebellion tax.
It's insecure. It's not something you can rely on if you're going to be a true artist. It's you might get to a point where you can rely on it, but not at first. It's usually almost impossible.
Well, yeah, definitely. And so I think what I didn't see, and that I realized as I reflected on it and I got older, was that my dad is a gifted, talented artist, but not a stellar businessman. So
I think that's true for a lot of artists. Art schools don't teach you how to be in business as an artist.
No, my dad didn't like selling his art to people he didn't like.
So that might have eliminated a few dollars in your pocket.
Right? I mean, which I get. You would spend months on a piece, and if for him, there's so much meaning in it. And I guess it's very personal, right? And business is not personal. So there were challenges, but I think I carried a sort of a fear within that if I chose just to focus on writing, that I would have this very insecure, financially difficult up and down experience.
And then you go into a business of creative director where
That's
you
right.
are actually working for others. So therefore, you have to have a little bit of a mercenaries attitude where I'm going to do this great job whether I like them or the product or not.
Oh, definitely. Well, I mean, you have to like it to a certain degree, like the
Sure.
product. You have to believe in what you're to make great work. You have to also believe in what you're creating.
Or it comes
right?
off as false.
Exactly. So there was that. But the reason I went down the commercial creativity route was because I was like, how can I keep creating, but have like some financial security? What might that look like? Oh, advertising, and slash marketing.
Sure.
Let's do that. But I didn't go there right out of Hunter College because I was also thinking like I love traveling. I wasn't a recovering. We'll come back to the recovering part. We never got there. I wasn't recovering yet, so still very nomadic.
Right.
So I was like, I want to travel. I want to create. What might it be? And so I was searching. I did a master's in I didn't finish. I did a master's class in cultural anthropology, and then I ended up doing wanting to explore international relations. Like I don't know. So I didn't know, but I decided if I'm going to do something in those fields, I better be able to survive in a very different place. So that brought me to actually, it was an internship working for a local Sunday English publication in Sri Lanka, in Colombo.
Right.
And so right after Hunter, I decided to go do that, work as a journalist in Sri Lanka. And I ended up publishing 7 pieces, op-ed pieces it was 2002. So it was the U.S. incursion into Iraq without the UN's, without going through the UN and everything that meant for international law and who we were as a country. And I remember thinking, oh man, they might not let me back in. They would have let me back in then, but not now.
That's probably true.
Without getting into politics. But, and so I did that and I was like, oh, this is interesting. And I also worked for an NGO in marketing and communication at the time. There were different opportunities that popped up for me while I was in Sri Lanka. And I also worked for the UNDP, rewriting their website copy so that it wouldn't sound so many acronyms, so people actually understood what they did in the country. And this is the thing. Here, it's like kind of quasi advice. What I did was, after I had published, like I think there were 7 to 9 articles in the Sunday paper, it's called the Sunday Leader, I was like, I want to do something more. I don't know what it is. Journalism's good. I created my own little portfolio and I went knocking on doors. And that's how I got these different roles. I pick up the phone and say, hey, this is who I am. This is what I can do. I have 9 articles here that was published.
In Sri Lanka or
Sri Lanka.
In Sri Lanka.
And so that got me this part-time role at an NGO, a big Plan International, worked writing articles for the Canadian International Development Agency on their projects in the country, and then doing the UNDP website copywriting. So that was just me saying, what do I have to lose? Let me take a chance. I have a little something in my pocket now because I had, let's take that and show them like, this is evidence like, hey, I can do this for you too. And that opened up a lot of doors.
And how does that then turn into being a creative director? And by the way, what does a creative director do, for those that don't know?
So I came back home and I thought, what if I use creativity to do good in the world? I would like to do that because that's what it felt like I was doing in Sri Lanka. I was doing that. And I thought, well, maybe I'll get my master's in global affairs. So I went to NYU and I got my master's in international relations, which was eye-opening and fantastic. I wrote my thesis on the role of transitional justice in post-conflict peace building. Never really used it, but but here we are. And then I had the chance to work at the UNDP in marketing and communications on a contract role for not enough money based on the loan that I had on my back from NYU, or produce an economic documentary in Bahrain. So I decided to do the economic documentary in Bahrain, which ended up being ad sales. I didn't know that. producing it. I thought it was going to be like, writing the script and, all the creative stuff. But it was, no, we also had to produce it. So we had to sell ad space to get it off the ground.
Wow. Okay.
And I was like, I just wrote on transitional justice and now I'm selling ad space in the Middle East. What is going on?
as one does.
Right? It's just, what am I doing here? But it taught me a lot. It taught me a lot about sales and communication and how important communication is, how important pitching your ideas are.
Well, pitching is a form of sales, and you're then selling to be able to sell.
Absolutely. But it's also a way of being able to succinctly tell a compelling story.
Well, absolutely. And you are working in a field in which you're doing the most difficult sales jobs ever, storytelling jobs ever, which is short. And short is hard.
Absolutely.
And getting your message across and making it clean, that's hard to do.
It was. And so actually, I really did have moments where I wondered, what the heck am I doing here? Like really those crisis moments of really, how did I get here? But looking back, once again, the gift of hindsight, it did give me a lot. It taught me a lot. It taught a lot of tools I ended up using much later. So then I ended up going to France. I left and I was wondering, what am I going to do? I met my ex-husband and he lived in France. So we went to France and I started to apply for a lot of different jobs in France and in Paris and London. And I ended up getting interviewed by a brand agency in London who appreciated this geopolitical background I had because they were working with Shell at the time, who wanted really to engage with the citizens of 2050 who would be living with the consequences of the energy choices we make today. And this is a long time ago. And they thought, oh, your profile, this is okay. You might not have agency background, but you have an eclectic background that I think could really suit this global campaign and a strategic background that we're interested in. So I got the job, my first agency role. And I remember it was in London. I remember being in my first brainstorm. It was not for Shell, it was for someone else. It's an agency. So you work with a lot of different clients and coming up with ideas with my colleagues and thinking, oh my God, I get paid to do this. This is so much fun. Like
that's nice.
It was an absolute blast. It's like, how can we do this? I don't know. Let's think about it. Like, what might it look like? How might we solve this problem? And how might we communicate that? What would get people's attention? And it was really fun. And I think fun and enjoyment are a really good sign that you're in the right place.
Yeah, because it means that you really want to do that.
Yeah, it's enjoyable. It's like, this feels good. And so I kind of stumbled into it, I guess. Well, not really stumbled because I was applying for more creative roles across the board, but I could have landed at arguably many different places. And that was where my agency career started. And I didn't start as a creative director. You never start as a creative director.
Right.
I started off as, it was a brand agency. So it was interesting. It was kind of sitting on creative strategy and also concepting and copywriting.
And were you being taught things by these folks, or were you just absorbing it yourself, or how did you learn?
Well, I was being taught a lot by the people I was with, but I also had my own, like I had been writing for a really long time.
Right.
But of course, writing for NGOs is very different than writing for corporates. So I think you learn.
Well, being a writer does not necessarily make you a strategist, and you're talking about strategy.
That's true.
So how did you learn to be strategic?
I think that's a good question. I don't know I think it was just experience, and I've always been quite strategic in my thinking, even though it's an interesting thing. People, especially in the old advertising world, you would have planning departments, which are strategy, and you would have creative as very separate.
Right.
Two separate departments, which never really made sense to me because the best creative work comes from really understanding what the problem is that we're trying to solve and getting really, really clear on that. And from that place, and like, what's the insight? What's the core human insight that, like, for our audience? What is the real problem we're trying to solve here? And really getting under the skin of that. And then the creative ideas are meaty and juicy and relevant and finger on the pulse kind of thing. So
Well, when you figure out why corporations insulate one department from another, you let me know, because for whatever reason, there's a lot of that goes on in corporate entities, in organizations, because there are little fiefdoms that build up, and people protect their fiefdoms, and then they don't interact, and that becomes a problem.
yeah, and in agencies, I mean, luckily there was the CEO of the agency that I started at in London. It was very progressive, and so she hired people with a lot of different skill sets.
Mhm.
So when clients came to us, it wasn't just, oh, your problem is X, the answer is an ad, right? So she had change management consultants and PR people and designers and, a host of people with different skills that could really understand what the problem was, and then figure out what tool was needed rather than just one particular thing.
All right. So for those who don't know, which will be many who are listening to this show, what does a creative director do? What's the purpose of that position?
A creative director, usually you come from either a copywriting background or sort of an art director / design background. Okay,
Mhm.
I'm on the copy side of life. So it's a blend, which is what I love about it, of creative strategy. It's understanding what is it we're really trying to solve, creative client facilitation and partnership. So being able to work really closely with clients and facilitate workshops and thinking and ideas and sparring to really also challenge, to be like, okay, is this really the problem we're trying to solve? I mean, like, what's really going on here? Let's look at this. Because the best work I've ever done in my entire career has always been in close partnership with my clients.
Nice.
Always. Like, looking back, award-winning work, that's because I had a great partnership, close partnership, because the client will know more about their brand than I can ever venture to know about. But I know
That
about
makes sense.
what I know about. And so together we're unstoppable.
Right.
Um, Anywho, so creative strategy, copywriting, and ideas, concepting. So being able to come up with ideas, whether it's for campaigns or it's for products or whatever it might be for, but being able to ideate. But as a creative director, it's not about you, in the sense that it's really about creatively directing not only clients but also teams. So being able to serve as a soundboard and inspiration to be able to activate curiosity and passion and ideas and the best from the creatives that are working within different teams.
And so you are the leader of the creative enterprise. Is that right?
Or different creative teams, depending on how you're set up as an agency. So you might be the head of a creative department, but in the US, for example, you have you could have a lot of people working for one particular client. So you might even have several creative directors for that particular client with
Mhm.
different teams. So it
Mhm.
depends on how big. In Europe, it's a little bit, the budgets are not as big, so we have smaller teams and more clients.
Correct me if I'm wrong, the creative director can generate the ideas that work, but may not necessarily generate those ideas, but oversee the production and the creation of those ideas into what ultimately is advertising of some kind or marketing of some kind.
True.
I got it right. Yay. It's always fascinating to me that I think most consumers don't realize that this product that they're looking at on TV or listening on the radio or seeing on a billboard or wherever, that they don't realize that there was a whole big machine that happened to
Oh,
make
yeah.
that appear.
Absolutely.
And that machine is a very creative machine, even though sometimes it looks like that doesn't look creative at all. But it is, in fact, a highly creative thing. So let's talk about your book. Let's talk about Welcome to the Creative Club. It's clear why you wrote it, but why did you write it now?
I wrote it now because I'm not sure I was conscious of this at the time, but definitely reflecting back on it, I think we're at a period in time where many of us feel disempowered, also creatively. Like that things are coming at us, life is happening to us.
Mhm.
And in many ways, we can feel disconnected from our creativity. And for me, creativity is a lot more than creative direction or, just it's not only what we do. It's a way of being in the world. It's how we creatively respond to life. It's how we creatively direct ourselves
Hmm.
in so many ways. So it feels like it's an important time to reclaim that, to reclaim what's always been ours, which is our creative power and capacity.
You make it abundantly clear in the book that it's not just about creative works, but it's in fact creating a life that's creative.
Definitely. I mean, it's also reframing or redefining what creativity is, because what stops most of us from being creative is the belief that, oh, well, I'm not creative. I don't even know how to draw a stick figure. If I told you how many times I've heard that, it's like, artistic expression is one form of creativity, but it's not the only one. Creativity lives in virtually every single domain. Creativity
Absolutely.
is how we survived as a species. Creativity is how our brains are wired, from how our brains, function and interact, from the default mode network to the control mode network. If you're a human, you're a natural born creative. It's also problem solving.
Hmm.
And when we say strategy, that's just a big word for problem solving. And we're all problem solvers. We solve problems every day in our life. We might
All
not
day
just
long.
all day long. We might not just realize it. That's also huge. That's what creativity is. It's like, oh, you're presented with a challenge and you creatively respond.
Well, I think a lot of people think that when you say the word be creative or creativity, that it means art. And it doesn't. It means what it is you're doing and how you go about making things happen. I mean, the auto mechanic can be an incredibly creative person.
Totally.
It's everywhere. All kinds of people are creative, but they probably don't think of themselves as being creative. That's what you're pointing out in your book, is that we're all that way,
Yeah, and I'm also pointing out that when we don't think of ourselves as creative, as like, oh, I'm just doing my job, or oh, this
right?
is how it is, that in many ways we disconnect from our ability to create with that belief.
Sometimes school kicks that out of us.
That's true. And life does too. Sometimes we get over awe and wonder get overshadowed by duty and responsibility.
And that's what you mean by saying that the book challenges everything people thought they knew about creativity, right?
Absolutely.
Hmm. And it says of your book, or said of your book, that it is life challenging. In what way is it life challenging?
Life changing?
Life changing. I beg your pardon. You're correct.
No, that's okay. Um, well, I think that's for everyone to determine on their own. Like I relate that was Susanna's feeling after she read the book. So I can't really answer that question for anyone, because that's a very personal, like, it's life changing. It was life changing to me, rediscovering what creativity means to me. I can only share my personal experience, was life changing. So after a really gnarly divorce and being afraid to sit with my feelings and everything that was going on after that, jumping into an unhealthy rebound relationship, getting fired from my job, which forced me to look at everything close up and just stop moving, stop avoiding, stop trying, just look. And I took a long, hard look, and it was like life played 52 pickup with me. Everything was on the floor. And I decided, my gut, it was a felt sense, said, you need to do something different. And so I went on the Trans-Siberian for 4 weeks alone, instead of looking for another job or getting caught in a fear loop or doing a host of different things that I might have done in the past. But it really felt strongly like, no, 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 you got to do something different. So I did. And I went on the Trans-Siberian, and it gave me two really powerful reminders. One, that, of course, I was going to be okay on my own. I've been on my own for years. And I grew up in New York City in the 80s and 90s. I mean, of course, I'm going to be all right. Two, that the world is full of adventure and wonder if we can just open to it and allow ourselves to receive it and experience it and take some risks and get out there. I mean, from the Gobi Desert to Moscow and Lenin's tomb, like, it was just, and all the people I met in between, it was a reminder of how big and wondrous life is. And the epiphany, or the life-changing moment, was when I was sitting back in the train the landscape of Siberia hurtling outside the window, looking in front of me at a Russian man cradling a bottle of vodka, punching the steel wall,
Oh,
smelling sauerkraut and body odor, and just like taking in the scene and thinking, oh my God, wait a minute. I creatively directed this. Like, I made this happen. I brought myself here. I created this moment. Scene, set design, main character energy, the cast of characters. I mean, you name it. Costume design. I created that.
Nobody forced you to do it. You did it.
Right? And it was that realization that I'm not only a creative director at work, I'm creatively directing my life. And you don't, for anyone who's listening, you don't need to be a creative director to do that, to creatively direct your life, to become aware that you are also happening to life. Life is not just happening to you, and you get to choose that. You get to create the scene.
That certainly got to be a part of why Betsey Johnson called it a wild ride. And then beyond it, obviously. But life does not have to be a wild ride in order to be a creative life. It just is in your case.
No, it doesn't have to be a wild ride. That's my scene. That's my choice. That's my creative direction. So everyone...
I think most life is wild, but it doesn't have to be.
No, I think it could be whatever you want it to be. And that's really the key to all of this, is getting closer to who you are and what moves you, what triggers you, what motivates you, what lights you up, and creating from that place, which is bound to be original and unique, because there's no other Steve Cuden like you in the world.
Are you sure?
I'm positive.
I think
prove
that's
me
in
wrong.
some ways, I think that's a good thing. So what would you say are some of the bigger challenges that you had to overcome while conceiving and writing the entirety of the book?
Whew. Well, the first challenge I had to overcome was I needed to smash the myth that I needed to write the book alone in a cabin in the woods with my typewriter and a pipe.
And a pipe?
I don't know. I just did like a Hemingway thing. I don't know. I just have this and a bottle of whiskey. I just, had this idea that I needed to be prolific and it was just all going to flow through me and I was going to write it all by myself. And this myth, which is a cultural myth, was getting in my way of creating. And that myth got smashed when I started working with a hybrid publisher, because of course I'm not doing this on my own. Creativity is not a lone task. We're constantly co-creating. And so I worked with with editors, and that was extremely helpful, as I have a team. I have people that can help make me even a better writer, that can work with me, that I can spar with. And then I'm also accountable to. I have deadlines.
You just said something that you write about in the book about that creativity is not a lone act. I think it can be in parts lone or lonely or alone, but it doesn't have to be, and ultimately it isn't. Ultimately, if you're going to be an artist, you're going to share your work with others, the public or whoever else. And that is definitely not a lone act, because your art then becomes what they perceive of it.
Absolutely. And also, I believe that creativity, the ideas that we get are coming through us in a variety of different ways. So I believe we're not creating alone. We're also co-creating with the universe, if you ask me.
So as you were writing the book, did you have a sense that what you were writing would be effective and applicable to many people?
I wrote the book. When I started writing the book, I'm going to answer that, but I'm going to go backwards. Another thing that got in my way for the process of writing was holding on too tight to what the book needed to do and the outcome, what it needed to be for me and for other people. So it blocked me. So I needed to let it go. I needed to let it go and just say, you know what? My intention writing this book is to hopefully make an impact in one person's life, and I'm going to let go. And whatever needs to emerge from me is going to emerge from me, and I'm going to trust it. And then the words started to flow. The more that I tried to choke it and think, who's going to get value and what is this going to be, the more it was blocking me. I had to trust that that it would. If I wrote from a place that was true, that was very important for me. Does this feel true? Not is this good, not is this bad, but does this feel true?
So you had to learn to trust yourself in doing this.
Absolutely.
And even though you'd been a creative person and have been a creative person your entire life, you weren't sure of yourself at that moment, and you needed to learn to be sure of yourself.
Sure, I think we could be creative and we're always still human, and insecurity is a part of that, right? And whenever we're about to embark on any new creative venture, which is going to be new if it's creative. If we've done it before, it's not very creative, right? So there's going to be an element of what I call the wobbles. It's going to be like, "Ooh, can I do this? Like, what is this? Oof."
That's where things really start to happen, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think we all counter that. And if we're lucky, because it's a sign that we're growing, we're going to encounter it again and again, right? The point is not to not encounter it.
It's fearful in some ways to some people. And when you get those wobbles or you become insecure or unsure or whatever those words might be, that sometimes you have to work to overcome it in order to move forward. And that's part of the process. And it actually stops some people from moving forward. And that's what they have to overcome. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes just allowing it, like, "Ooh, I feel wobbly." And then reminding yourself of why are you writing this book? Why are you creating this? What's the intention behind it? And does this feel true to me? And let that guide you. Don't worry about the rest. The rest is the rest. People will interpret the book or get value from it or not, or that's not up to you.
So ultimately you had to satisfy yourself first.
Yeah. Or I don't know if the word is satisfied, but I felt compelled to write the things I was writing about, because it wasn't always very satisfying to write about, stories of where I lost my creative power. That was difficult. They were vulnerable stories. I wasn't anticipating. I didn't expect to write those stories. It wasn't part of my plan, but it's what emerged.
I guess what I'm trying to say is once you did write it, once you did get to it, then you went, okay, this is the right path. I am going to write about this. It is going into the book. I'm not going to cut it out. And that then
Yeah.
became the satisfying part is, okay, this is now right. That's what I'm
Yeah.
trying to get to.
Yeah. I think the word I would use is fulfilling.
Great.
Yeah.
It fulfilled you once you got there, but it took you a little while to get there. Yeah.
Oh, it
Mhm.
did. And I luckily, again, I had a great editor who was she was fantastic. And we would always ask the question, is this in service of the story and the reader? It was a
Mhm.
really good filter, always. So that was always the filter. Is this in service of? So we're not just going to share things that were difficult just for me. That's not because it's in service of the reader and the story.
So what did you get to along the way that surprised you? Were there epiphany moments where it was like, wow, I'd never thought of that before? And what surprised you?
Having to write, there's only one pure memoir chapter in the book where I write about my marriage and divorce.
Hmm.
And I remember I handed the rough draft in to my editor, and she said, "This doesn't sound like the Pia I know today wrote this. This sounds like the perspective of an older version of you. It's not very compassionate. And I think your readers deserve the version of Pia that's here right now. It's important." And that surprised the heck out of me. And it made me aware that I was still looking at myself and that part of my life through the eyes of an older version of me that was less forgiving and less kind and less wise.
And that helped, I assume, that those
Oh,
words
hell
from
yeah.
her.
That was extremely transformative. I rewrote the chapter and I got a chance to rewrite my story from the perspective of the woman I am today.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that was incredibly healing. Again, that wasn't the intention, but it was incredibly healing. It was very transformative. And anyone can do that, by the way. You don't have to publish it. It's a very powerful act to write and reclaim your story from the eyes of the person and perspective of the person you are today. Because we could forget that we might be stuck in an old past, an old prescription.
You write in the book, and I'm quoting you, quote, creativity is the act of transformation, taking, quote, no thing, the word nothing, no thing, an abstract idea and turning it into something, whether a product, poem, book, or business plan. So that's partly what you're talking about is you're taking this other life that you had, which was something else, or it
Mm.
wasn't nothing, obviously, but turning it into something different or other,
Yeah. And a reclamation.
and a reclamation. And you, that was then an epiphany for you in going through that, I assume.
Definitely. It was an
Hmm.
epiphany that uh, I was stuck looking at this in an antiquated way, that it needed an update, but I didn't realize I was stuck till I wrote about it.
Well, you write all kinds of wonderful things in the book, that creativity is not just something you do, it's a way of being. And so that life then is a creative act from the moment you wake up, or I guess even in your sleep, it's a creative
Yeah,
act.
totally.
The dreaming is a part of that. And that you talk about believing in what you're doing. This is partly what you're alluding to, I think. How important is it for artists to believe what they're doing? Now, as a creative director, we had talked about that already, that you needed to get past it being false or fake, or you have to believe in it. But as a human, as an artist, how important does that then become?
Is believing in what you're making? Is that what you mean?
Yes. Or in yourself, I guess, too.
The word that comes up for me most is trust. First, more than because maybe belief follows. Do you know? Like trusting in yourself and trusting in life and trusting in your work. So let's say you have an idea to create something, whatever that might be, allowing it, like following it, trusting it, not
Hmm.
needing to know exactly what it will be, because you can't, because that's part of the creative process, is not knowing. And allowing yourself just to trust yourself that no matter what it becomes, it's coming from you, and it's meant to be there in some way, and that builds belief. I think that feels like a prerequisite for me, is just to trust yourself. And maybe this is cliche, but it's so damn true. Trust the process.
Hmm.
Allow yourself to be in it.
Artists sometimes have to take a leap of faith into the void, and
Oh
that
yes.
can be really scary sometimes.
Oh yes, we definitely. I mean, I think every time you're about to create, you take a leap into the void,
Hmm.
because you in the void is uncertainty, and it's a liminal space. It's when you're between what was and what could be, and it's unknown. So it can feel like a hallway of doors. It can feel like so many different things, but that's the creative juice. That's where you're in the thick of it, and just becoming aware of, like, oh, it feels like the void. Oh, this is wildly uncomfortable. Oh yeah, good. You're in the creative juice, man. You're in the sauce. Stay in it. Stay there.
It's that discomfort that actually is where it starts or
Yeah,
happens.
absolutely.
Hmm.
Exactly. And if you start to feel that discomfort, just becoming aware, like, oh man, I'm hitting that creative nerve. This is good stuff. Like even if it's uncomfortable, that will help you be in it
Well,
and trust.
you also discuss that artists sometimes have a touch of madness. You talk about madness in the book, and my question is, does it help to have a touch of madness to be a creative person?
Oh, what is that quote? Like, if the world is mad, they'll think a sane man crazy, or something like that. Did you ever hear that?
I've never heard that. That's a good one, though.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, anyway, I in the book I kind of smashed, because I do smash some myths in the book that I feel are really important for us to embrace our creativity. And one of them is that we don't have to be reliant on alcohol or drugs or madness in order to create.
Hmm.
That's just, it's not a.
Well, you can look at the truly famous mad artists. I mean, probably the most famous is Van Gogh, who
Hmm.
was probably pretty crazy to deal with in in the real world, uh, but yet he turned out this extraordinary work, and he worked through it, whatever it was that he was going through, whether he had been poisoned or whether he had something wrong with him, whatever it was, uh, and that he was a starving, suffering artist. And it's not necessary to be a suffering or starving artist, is it?
No, absolutely. And I think there's a piece of research that really resonated and kind of shifted something within me when I read it, by a psychologist. It was an academic paper that was exploring, and again, breaking the myth, or the idea that alcohol and drugs fuels creativity. And he said, actually, the pattern that we're seeing, the relationship between drugs and alcohol and creativity, is a sign of a lot of artistic people being more emotionally sensitive. So there's a higher sensitivity. So emotions are deeply felt. And when we feel all emotions deeply, that can be quite challenging, especially without kind of support. So people might then turn to alcohol in order to numb, or drugs
Mm-hmm.
to numb the sensitivity.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not about fueling the creativity. It's about numbing the sensitivity. That's the pattern. And that was fascinating to me.
I think that that's correct. I don't think that alcohol or drugs actually makes you creative at all.
No, it doesn't. Research has shown that it doesn't.
Right.
It does the opposite.
Right. Well, because it takes you out of who you are sometimes.
Yes.
And that's not what you want to do if you're going to be a creator.
No. You want to go deeper into who you are.
Yes, which is sometimes really painful. And so that's
Yes.
people want to avoid it. So what do? They self-medicate.
But the beauty is that that pain can also serve as beautiful creative inspiration. It's something we can take and transform and turn into something. We can use it. We can use it in our work. That's another perspective we can hold about it.
In light of this, you also talk about the inner judge. How can we overcome our inner judge?
The beautiful and perhaps simple way of overcoming the inner judge is inviting in curiosity. Curiosity and the judge are like oil and water. They can't coexist in the same room. The minute judgment starts to appear, activate your curiosity. So if you go, oh, this is really shit, oh, it's the judges around. Instead of that, activate your curiosity and go, oh, I wonder what gold there is in this shit. I wonder how might I turn that into something else? Oh, maybe I take that. You know what I mean? We start to get curious. Curiosity is asking questions. It's observation. It's really asking powerful questions and getting very curious about what you're looking at or what you're making. And the minute you do that, the judge will start to moonwalk out of the room.
Do we still need our judge, in a sense, to decide, hey, this work is working, it's done, it's good, it's worthy of putting out into the world? We need that judge too, though, don't we?
It's about knowing when to activate what, depending where you are in the process. So I'll give you a very practical example. When I'm sitting down and I'm first starting to write something, my inner perfectionist or judge will waltz into this space and go, oh no, that sentence though, really? Is that how you're starting off? And it will make me freeze. And I'll say to the judge, hey, thanks for coming over and trying to make this good so I'm safe. But you're not needed for this part of the creative process. I'm going to come back and ask you to come back later. So thank you, but no, not now. Out you go. And then I go back to it. And however many times I need to do that, I go back to it because that's the precious kind of ideation creating time where it gets to be whatever it needs to be. It gets to be shit, gets to be gold, it gets to be good. It doesn't matter. The fact is that you're showing up for the work and you're just doing it and just allowing it to come through no matter what it is. Then after it's come through, hey, judge, hey, evaluator, come back in. How might we make this stronger? What are the parts that you see that could be improved? Let's get sharp, right? And then you might invite that inner judge back in or inner evaluator at a different point in your creative process. Then that's helpful. At the very beginning, it's not helpful.
But you do need to have, as an artist and as a person, some form of judgmental ability to say that this is good, that this does work. It's in the beginning where it's really difficult to overcome if the judge is sitting there saying, no, 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 this doesn't work.
And I'm just going to challenge that because I've been thinking about this a lot myself.
Good.
Another perspective to hold is, well, who are you? Who are we to judge if it's good or bad?
True.
Who am I to judge if it's good or bad? What if I don't share a piece of work because I think it's bad? And what if that piece of work would really positively impact someone? Or what if they think it's good? Who am I to say it's good or bad? My father would definitely disagree with me on this, but sometimes I just like, to challenge things. I mean, of course we can, I don't, even the word judge doesn't sit well with me. I can bring in my evaluator and I can bring in my intuition.
So I've mentioned on this show many times the author Anne Lamott and her book Bird by Bird. Are you familiar
Yeah.
with that book?
Yeah, I'm
And
familiar
she
with it. I
talks.
have it.
She's a writer, and she's talking about writing in that book. And she has that wonderful chapter in there, and the title of it is "Shitty First Drafts," and
Yeah.
that you have to be willing to put the initial stuff out to take a look at it and then craft it further. So I've always thought of writing that as a writer, your first draft is you, the artist, making the clay that you then shape in your subsequent drafts. So
Definitely.
that's how I think of it. And that's what you're talking about. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I edited. You can keep editing. Gosh, you could almost never finish editing a book or
Of
a
course.
piece of work if you wanted to, but at some point you got to call it. And I do think intuition plays a role with that.
So I worked, he's no longer with us, but I was friends with and worked with for a long time a man named Ron Sargent who invented the porta potty, and he invented the cruise control. He was an inventor, and
Wow.
he was an engineer. And he used to have a saying. He'd say there comes a time in the course of every product when you have to shoot the engineer, because the engineer will keep tugging and playing and pulling forever if you don't shoot the engineer and stop them. So that's sort of what we're talking about right now.
Totally what we're talking about. There's at some point you need to go, okay, that's it, good enough, go, it's done. But you'll feel it. Again, your gut will play it, your instinct will play a role in it. We're like, you'll know.
You write in the book, and I'm quoting, "Fuck fear, do it anyway."
Absolutely.
Is fear useful in any way?
Definitely. Fear tells us when we're on the precipice of something big, or when we're on the precipice or edge of something that's very meaningful and requires risk. And if we can see fear like that, if we can discern it, because there's different types of fear, but if we can just discern, like, oh, this fear is data and it's telling me I'm about to take a risk in the direction of something that's really meaningful to me. And I don't know how it's going to turn out or what it's going to be. And I'm scared shitless. Right? Okay, good. Sit with that. It's all right. You know what I mean? Like you can be with that. You're strong. We're strong enough. We can be with the fear and we can do it anyway. Okay, all right. That's all right. I don't like the word fearless because it feels like, hey, sometimes I'm fearful. Like I'm fearful. That's not going to stop me. I don't have to be fearless. I can do it anyway with fear. That's courage.
I think fear sometimes actually spurs you to be creative to solve overcoming the fear.
Oh, definitely. Fear and risk are closely interrelated, right? And I think with creative work, there's an element of risk that's involved. You take a risk, and with risk comes a certain amount, comes fear, right? And that's something that if we can identify as like, oh, means I'm onto something big, I'm about to do something big, then I think it becomes easier to work with.
Well, you write also in the book, whatever you do, don't die with your magic inside you. You want to expand on that a little bit?
Well, what a shame it would be to have this big, beautiful life and all the gifts that we've been given and not share them with anyone because we're afraid of how it's going to be received or how we're going to be perceived or failing or whatever the fears might be. What a shame that would be. And everyone, I believe, has magic and medicine to share with the world that we need badly, especially right now. In a time of destruction, we need everyone to activate their creative capacity and their creative power, and so it would just be a shame not to share that with the world while you can. And I think death is a really good reminder or a really good creative instigator.
It's a motivator.
It's such a motivator. It's like, hey, we're gonna die. We're all gonna die. And we all have a hidden expiration date. Ha ha. No one knows when our numbers are gonna be called. Anything can happen. So why don't we let that move us to create, shape, go after the things that we're burning to do inside? I mean, what do we got to lose when we're gonna lose it all anyway? Nothing.
It's a little bit like Nike says, just do it.
That's right.
And get at it. Well, I've been having just a fantastic, fun, very fascinating conversation for just shy of an hour now with Pia Mailhot-Leichter, and we're going to wind the show down a little bit right now. And I'm wondering, you've worked with lots of people in your career, you've been to a lot of places, and you've already told us some really great stories from your life. But I'm wondering if you can share with us a story that's either weird, quirky, offbeat, strange, or just plain funny.
This is in relationship to when I worked at that agency in London, and it was the financial crisis, and we were, pitching a lot of clients for business. And there was a company called, I think it was called Blue Whale Mail, and they had like another mail, like another Gmail, another mail provider, and we were pitching for their business, and their mascot or their like brand character was a whale. Obviously, that was their name, and so we had. One of the creatives, we bought a custom made, like we had a whale suit made that he wore, like a human like size whale suit.
Yes.
For the pitch meeting. And then we even had like the sound of like whale sounds, like that we had like under the desk with like press play, as we shared all the work. And then I just remember my colleague coming in with in that whale costume. Like just it was really, we won the pitch, but it was pretty far out. It was funny. It was definitely a moment.
Did he look like a whale?
Yeah, he had like the full costume. Do you know what I mean? Like the whole, he had like, those Tyrannosaurus Rex, like the whole
Yes.
suit. He had like
Yes.
a whole whale suit, and
Oh my
and his name
goodness.
was Ed, and Ed was quite tall, so he was a tall guy. So it was just like this big whale and whale sounds and a pitch deck, and it was just like what we won't do to try to win this client.
And you did.
We did. So that was quite funny.
That's a beautiful thing. All right. So last question for you today, Pia. You've clearly shared with us a really massive amount of advice throughout this entire show, but I'm wondering, do you have a single solid piece of advice or a tip that you like to give to those who are maybe starting out in the business, or maybe they're in a little bit trying to get to the next level?
Well, first, I don't know if it's advice. I'm going to activate curiosity. I would ask, like, what is it that you really want to create and make real in the world? Like taking a step back. What about that is important to you? To get really clear on what it is and why it has meaning for you, and seeing what you might discover from there. Because I think a lot of times, without realizing it, at least myself, can be on paths that have kind of been laid out for us, or ideas that things we think we should do, or things that we think we should do that will help us become successful or safe. And it might not always be the thing that we might really be called to do. So I guess more than advice, it would be I would get really curious about them, or ask them to get curious about themselves.
I think that that's really very powerful and positive, because the first step to creating anything is to ask, what am I doing and why?
Yeah.
And if you don't know that, then you're just sort of fumphering around, not really doing anything. And that can be valuable, by the way. That fumphering around process can lead to things. But until you know what it is that your goal is, your purpose, it's storytelling. There has to be a goal at whatever it is you're doing. And that's what you're talking about, is to determine what that is. Am I correct?
Yeah, absolutely. What is the adventure that you're really after? And is it yours? Is it something someone told you is a good idea to do, or something that you think is what you should do, that we should ourselves to death, right? Or is it really what you want?
Mm-hmm.
And then if it's what you want, let's say it's storytelling. Oh, get creative. Start getting creative. What are like 20 different ways that you could use storytelling in your life and career?
Yeah, I think that that's very valuable advice. I think that is the first step in the whole process, is stepping back and saying, what is it I'm trying to do? Without that, you're not going very far, very fast, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And then when you discover what that territory is, there are all these different ways it can unfold. And that's exciting, because oftentimes we can get wedded to it has to look like it has to look like something very particular. It's either black or it's white, when it's all the colors of the rainbow. It's all the shades. It can be so many different things once we're clear on what it is.
I think that that's very valuable advice. Pia Mailhot-Leichter, this has just been a fantastic hour on StoryBeat, and I cannot thank you enough for your time, your energy, and particularly for all of your wisdom. I thank you for spending some time with us today.
Thank you so much for having me on, Steve. It's been wonderful.
And so we've come to the end of today's StoryBeat. If you like this episode, won't you please take a moment to give us a comment, rating, or review on whatever app or platform you're listening to. Your support helps us bring more great StoryBeat episodes to you. StoryBeat is available on all major podcast apps and platforms, including Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and many others. Until next time, I'm Steve Cuden, and may all your stories be unforgettable.